really impressed. He saw how the older couple, the husband, was always, the way he spoke to his wife, honey, sweetie, darling, dolly. And finally, he said to the old man, he says, "I can't. How do you do it?" He says, "Do what? I mean, how do you? You're so romantic. After 50 years, every time you're speaking to your wife, honey, dolly, sweetie, darling." The old guy says, "I can't remember her name." Okay. So I'm going to tell you a story. The story begins with a simple man sitting in shul at the rabbi's class. This is in an old wood shul in the old country. And there's a big long table where the rabbi gives his class. And this simple man is seated there, and he's trying to pay attention. He's trying to understand what the rabbi is teaching, and he's a simple man. He can't follow along. And he begins to feel frustrated with himself. He gets up and he walks away from the class, and he wanders outside. And as he's pacing in front of the shul, lamenting his thick brain that can't absorb the words of Torah, a mysterious stranger appears and says, "What's troubling you? You look troubled." And the simple man says, "Yeah, no matter what I do, the words of Torah don't penetrate my brain." So the mysterious stranger says, "I have something for that." And he pulls out a parchment, and on the parchment is written the Aleph base. And the mysterious stranger says, "Read the Aleph base from this parchment, and your eyes will become open, and your mind will become open to the words of Torah. But make one promise to me, that when you become a scholar, you must always study with whomever asks. No matter what the subject, no matter who the person, if someone wants to study with you, you must always study with them." The simple man says, if only, I can't even follow as a student in any class. If I would be in a position to teach, of course I would teach anybody anything. The mysterious stranger says, "That's a deal?" The man says, "Yes, of course it's a deal." And he takes the parchment and he begins to read the Aleph base from the parchment. And as he does so, he feels his mind open. And he goes back into shul and he sits down at the class, and for the first time in his life, everything is clear. Everything makes sense. Around the same time, there was a poor man, and he was wandering the streets looking for menial labor, some type of a day job that he could do and make a little bit of money to put bread on the table for his family. And nothing was happening, no luck. And as he was lamenting his plight, his poverty, his inability to make a living, all of a sudden a mysterious stranger appeared. And he says to the poor man, "What's troubling you? You look troubled." And the poor man says, "Yes, I am troubled. No matter what I do, I can't make a living." And the mysterious stranger says, "Here, I have something for that." And he pulls out a coin. He says, "Take this coin. Don't spend it. Hold on to it. And start doing business." Start doing business? Yeah, start doing business. See what happens. But listen, when you become wealthy and somebody asks you for tzedakah, don't question it. Don't ask what it's for, and don't ask how much. Whatever they want, you just give it to them. If you have it, you give it. And the poor man laughs. He says, I'm the recipient of charity. I live on handouts. If only I will be in a position to give people tzedakah and to be able to give them whatever they ask for. Of course, I would always do that. And the mysterious stranger says, so it's a deal? The man says, of course it's a deal. And he takes the coin, and he turns around, and somebody offers him some merchandise. Somebody's trying to unload some merchandise that he couldn't sell in the market that day. And he lets him buy it on credit, even without any money down. And then he turns around, and somebody's looking to buy that exact same merchandise, and he sells it, and he makes a profit before he even has to pay back the debt, and just starts picking up, and he's doing business. He's into business. Okay. Around the same exact time, there's a single man, and he is lonely. He wants to have a wife, and he wants to start a home, and he is lamenting his plight as a single lonely man. And this mysterious stranger appears and says, what's troubling you? You look disturbed. And the young man says, well, to tell you the truth, yes, I'm single, and I can't find a fitting wife with whom I can start a home. The mysterious stranger says, well, I have something for that. Over the hill, there's a cottage all by itself. There's a widow who lives there, and she has a young daughter who's of marriageable age. And because there's no father, and they're a poor family, and nobody knows about them, nobody's looking to make shidduch with them. But I want to tell you something, this daughter of this widow is an incredible girl, and she will make an incredible wife. And she's a treasure. I'm telling you, go there and ask the widow to marry her daughter. The young man says, wow, thanks for the suggestion. That's really great. Thank you. And the mysterious stranger says, but there's one deal. Whatever she tells you to do, don't question it. Don't ask why. Just whatever she asks you to do, always do it. And the young man said, if only I had a wife to tell me what to do, of course I would do it. Okay, just remember the deal. And the young man heads over the hill. He finds the cottage. There's the widow. He asks to marry the daughter, and they get married. Okay. It's a number of years later, and the rabbi is teaching his class. He's a great scholar, and he only teaches the most elite students. And in walks a mysterious stranger. And he says, Rebbe, teach me Aleph Beis. And the rabbi becomes incensed. He says, how dare you interrupt this class? This is high-level study. Go find a malamed, find a tutor, a school teacher to teach you Aleph Beis. And the mysterious stranger says, Rebbe, I'm asking you. You teach me Aleph Beis. And the rabbi says, I have no time for Aleph Beis. I am a scholar. The mysterious stranger says, you used to be as ignorant as I was until somebody gave you a parchment of Aleph Beis. Isn't that true? And the rabbi, he was carrying the parchment. He takes it out. He says, this is a joke. I don't need this. I achieved what I did because of my acumen. Take it. Take the parchment. I don't need it. And be gone with you. The mysterious stranger disappears with the parchment. The rabbi turns to continue his class. It's gone. It's gone. Everything is gone. All of his Torah learning is gone. He is as simple and ignorant as the day on which he received that parchment at first. It's all gone. Around the same time, there's a rich man sitting in his study at home, and his butler comes to him and says, Sir, there's a man at the door. He insists on seeing you. What does he want? He wants money. He's asking for a donation. The rich man says, well, you know our rule in this house. You give 1 ruble to whoever's asking and tell them to move on. Yes, sir, but he's saying he has a special cause. Tell him no special causes. Give him a ruble and send him on his way. The mysterious stranger barges in past the butler, makes his way into the study, and says to the rich man, I have a special cause. I have an urgent need. I need 100 ruble. The rich man says, that's not what we do here. We give 1 ruble for everybody. Be gone with you. The mysterious stranger says, you were once poor like me. You were once the recipient of charity like me. You used to live on handouts. And I know your secret. You were given that coin, and from the day that you received that coin, your business prospered. And the rich man pulls out the coin and says, yeah, this is a joke. I achieved what I did because of my business sense. Here, take this coin and get out of here. The mysterious stranger disappears with the coin. A messenger enters a minute later. Bad news, your warehouse just burnt down. Another messenger comes in. Bad news, all the merchandise coming in on the ships, they just sank and they're uninsured. Within 2 minutes, he's bankrupt. He's totally wiped out, no assets, and a bunch of debt that he has no way to pay off. Around the same time, there's a husband, and he's at home. He lives in a cottage with his wife and his mother-in-law, a widow, and they support themselves. They have a meager parnosa from a cow. They have a little cow, and they sell the milk. And a mysterious stranger is making his way up the hill to their cottage. And the wife says to the husband, I see somebody, nobody comes here, nobody comes to our cottage. We're so over, we're out of the way, we're over the hill, nobody comes to us. I see a stranger coming. We have an opportunity to do the mitzvah hachnosas orchim, welcoming guests. Let's do the mitzvah of hospitality in its finest form. Slaughter the cow and let's serve him meat. And the husband says, yes, dear. And he goes to prepare the cow. And the mysterious stranger sees him and says, what are you doing? He says, oh, I'm getting ready to prepare a meal for you. Will you be our guest? And the stranger says, yes, I'll be your guest. But you don't have to go out of your way. You don't have to serve me such food. You don't have to serve me meat. The young man says, I do, I really do. Well, why, may I ask? Are you serving me so well? He says, well, I got to be honest, it's not me, it's my wife. My wife told me that I should serve meat, that we should slaughter the cow and serve you meat. So the mysterious stranger says, and do you always do everything that your wife tells you to do? And the young man says, well, yeah, I do. That's the deal, yeah, that's how it works. And the mysterious stranger says, that's very good to hear. In that case, may you continue to be happily married, and please take from me this parchment of olive base, and take from me this coin. Okay, that's the story. It's a parable. That means it didn't happen. And since it didn't happen, meaning it's just made up, it's just to teach a lesson, let's ask this question. Since it's made up anyway, could we change it? I mean, there's nothing sacrosanct about the story. We could change it. But I'm saying, would it be effective? Could we change it that the rabbi, the simple man who became wise, that he would have agreed to study with the simple man, and he would have gotten the other gifts? Or could we change it that the rich man, he would have given the tzedakah, and he would have gotten the other two gifts? I mean, why not? Why not change it? Or does it have to be told the way that we told it just now? How do blessings work? Blessings are interesting. A blessing needs a vessel, and the vessel needs to be empty. A full vessel cannot receive. So the most important thing in receiving a blessing is humility. When we are full of self or ego, ego, edging God out, then we can't receive. But when we're humble, when we are empty of ego, then we are a receptacle to receive blessings. That's the key. That's how blessings work. There's a story that took place in Lubavitch, in the town of Lubavitch, with the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe of Chabad. Once a man came to him for a very serious matter. I don't know what it was, but a serious matter. And he asked for a bracha, and the Rebbe Rashab told him, "Ich kann dir nicht helfen, I can't help you." And the man walked out of the Rebbe's room and began to cry, bitter tears. Now the Rebbe Rashab had an older brother, the Razah, Reb Zalman Aaron, an older brother. And the Razah saw this man crying, and he asked him, "Was weinst du? Why are you crying?" So he says, "I was just in Yechidus with the Rebbe, with your brother, and I told him about my serious problem, and he told me, ich kann dir nicht helfen, I can't help you." So the Razah was taken aback. And he did what only an older brother can do. Rebbe or no Rebbe, he barged into the office, and he said to his brother, "This is how you do business? There's a man standing outside in tears. He comes to you, his Rebbe, for a bracha, and now he's standing outside in tears." Rebbe Rashab said, "Send him back in." So the guy comes back in. The Rebbe Rashab got up, he put on a gartel, he gave the guy a bracha, and the bracha was fulfilled. It came to fruition. Anyways, that's the story. The Rebbe told this story, and the Rebbe actually asked a couple of questions about the story. First of all, why did the Rebbe Rashab say he couldn't help the guy when a minute later he did? Apparently he could help him, because a minute later he helped him. The second question is, even let's say he couldn't help him, but you don't just have to say to someone, "I can't help you." You can, even if you can't help them, you can show empathy. You can commiserate with them. You can at least give them moral support. Why did the Rebbe Rashab speak so gruffly, seemingly? "I can't help you." So the Rebbe explained like this. You have to understand the mechanics of a bracha. A bracha needs a receptacle. Or, more accurately stated, in order for one to receive a bracha, one must be a receptacle. the person himself or herself has to become a vessel, an open, empty, receptive vessel. And that means humility. Self-reliance is the antithesis of humility, and it is not a receptacle for a blessing. You want to rely on yourself? Rely on yourself. No problem. That's good. Then it's all up to you. It's all on you. But a humble person who says, I am powerless, I can't do this, help me. Now he allows, or she allows, a greater power, Hashem's power, to move in and to do for the person what he or she cannot do. So apparently this guy came to the Rebbe Rashab and he was asking for a bracha, but he wasn't entirely humble. He wasn't entirely ready to surrender to the idea that he needed this bracha. He sort of felt like, you know, I've got it covered, but, you know, let's have an extra boost. You know about the guy who was running late for an appointment, a meeting in Manhattan, and he's driving around trying to find a parking spot. You can't find a parking spot in Manhattan. And it's a big business deal. He stands to make $1 million. So in desperation, he says, God, if you help me find a parking spot right now, I'm going to give 10%. I'm going to give Meiser from the business deal to tzedakah. And nothing's happening. He drives around the block another time. It's getting later and later. God, open up a parking spot for me. I'll give chaimish. I'll give 20%, the fifth, to tzedakah. Nothing's happening. He says, God, please, a parking spot, and I'll give half of the proceeds. I'll give half to tzedakah. And all of a sudden, he sees a car backing out. A spot opens up. Says, God, never mind. I found one. So this guy was a little bit self-reliant. And he wanted a bracha, but I guess he also felt like koichi ve'etzem yadi, that my power and the might of my hand has done this for me. And when the Rebbe Rashab told him, I can't help you, he meant it. He was looking at the guy and he saw, you're not a vessel. Right? Like, I can rain down blessing on you, but if you don't have a cup, or you aren't a cup, you aren't an empty cup, then how are you going to receive the blessing? I can't help you. You can't be helped. So he told him the truth. I can't help you. The guy went outside and he felt broken. He felt helpless, dejected. And he broke into tears. And the Razah saw him in that state and came back and said to Rebbe Rashab, you know this guy is outside, totally broken. And the Rebbe Rashab basically said, perfect, we can work with that. We can work with that, send them back in. Broken people we can work with. I think Abba Ibn, the statesman, ambassador, politician, he said, nations, like people, tend to act rationally after all other possibilities have been exhausted. So, you know, he's desperate enough to listen to reason. Life has beaten him into reasonableness. And if you're not reasonable yet, if you're not humble yet, go out, keep trying to do it your way, and life will humble you. So that's how blessings work. And then the Razah sent the guy back in. The Rebbe Rashab gave him the bracha. Now the bracha would work, because now it could take hold. He was ready to receive it. Okay, so you following this? Okay, so let's go back to our parable. The parable really is a story. It's really the same story 3 times, right? But with a different ending on one of them. But it's the same setup. The story each time is there's a guy who needs something. Because he lacks that thing, he's a broken person. And then he receives a blessing that makes him whole, that gives him that thing that he is lacking. And then what happens is the occupational hazard, the inherent danger of every blessing. Do you know the inherent danger of every blessing? In order to get a blessing, you have to be broken. And each one of these guys was broken in a different way when he received the blessing. The problem is, after you get blessed, after you're taken care of, you've been helped. Now the desperation goes away. Now I can breathe. Now it's good. And then I start getting big ideas. You know what? Maybe I'm really worth it. Maybe I did. Maybe this isn't even a blessing. Maybe this is, I built this thing. I did it. And then what happens? Self-reliance. And what happens to the blessing? The self-reliance that comes in the wake of the blessing becomes the undoing of the blessing. So that which made me blessable, my brokenness, becomes replaced with self-reliance and makes me unblessable. My cup becomes full of self, and now there's no more room for God and for all the gifts that He wants to give me. So it's a real challenge that even after we've been blessed, to retain, to hold on to the original brokenness that we had at the moment when we first made room for God and His blessings in our lives. It's nicht kein Kunst. It's not a big deal for a person who has nothing to turn it over to God. What choice do you have? What takes work is when, after you did turn it over to God, and God comes into your life and does miracles for you and does for you what you couldn't do for yourself, to remain humble. To remain cognizant of the fact that this is nothing but a miracle. This is not you. This is all God. So in our parable, what happened? You had a man who was broken because he couldn't study. He was simple. He couldn't study Torah. And that kept him humble. And because he was so humble, he was a receptacle for this amazing blessing of being able to be full of the light of Torah. But then what happened is once he became full of the light of the Torah, he started believing in himself. And he was no longer a recipient or an eligible recipient for a blessing. He lost his blessing. He became smug. He became conceited. He lost his blessing. And that happens very often. Somebody who's smart, and everybody wants to listen to what they have to say, can feel very good about himself. And that is not conducive to remaining open to the flow of godliness in your life. That blocks out godliness. I'm a smart guy. I know a lot of stuff. That's not a way to open yourself up to the flow of blessing. The second story, the guy was dejected because he was poor. And then, because he was dejected, he was so open, he was so receptive, this amazing blessing of wealth came into his life. But then what happened? As soon as he became wealthy, he he started feeling good about himself, started feeling self-reliant. And now, after he became self-reliant, he forgot that it was a blessing. He forgot it's all God, it's all a miracle. He was no longer receptive to that blessing. He lost his blessing. And that can often happen as well. Somebody gets a little bit of money. Now he's got some power. People are listening to him, and he knows it. Changes a person, no doubt about it. It's intoxicating. Changes a person's whole outlook. And it can make him insufferable. There's a saying about, the three things that change a person. They say money, mashke, and chassidus. They all change a person. Somebody says, well, I made some money. It didn't change me. I still have the same friends, still drive the same car, still the same simple guy. Okay, apparently you didn't make enough money. Make a little more, and let's see if you remain the same humble guy. Mashke, person says, I drank, it didn't change me. Okay, apparently you were drinking in moderation. Do like the guy who doesn't know his limit. Drink a little more, and let's see what happens. Let's see if it changes you. And then somebody says, I learned this, it didn't change me. Okay, you didn't learn enough. Learn some more. We'll see if it changes you. Anyways, the point is, money changes people. And what does it change? How does it change them? The person becomes conceited, becomes arrogant. Not all the time, obviously, but it's not a death sentence becoming rich, but it's definitely dangerous. It's very dangerous. Just like becoming smart is very dangerous. Smart, rich, all these blessings are dangerous. And ultimately, what's the danger? Is that you're at risk of losing the blessings. There's one blessing, which is really a gift from God. It really is a gift from God. It's something miraculous. It's not a product of human effort. We couldn't do this on our own. It comes from heaven. But it's different than all other blessings in that this blessing is different in that it will never cause you to lose your humility. This blessing will actually make you more humble. And that is the blessing of marriage. Being married will humble you. So could we have changed the parable? Could we make it that the rich guy ended up with the olive base and with the wife? Or we could make it that the smart guy ended up with the coin and the wife? Or only the guy with the wife ends up with the olive base and the coin? It has to be the guy with the wife ends up with the olive base and the coin. Because if that's how blessings work, if they operate based on humility, then obviously, I guess we could have made it that all three of them won in the end. That would have been nice. If the smart guy would have been a humble smart guy, and the rich guy would have been a humble rich guy. And there are humble smart and humble rich people. But for sure, somebody who is successfully, happily married, no question, they're all humble. There's no conceited, arrogant, self-absorbed person who is successfully and happily married. Doesn't exist. They did a study at UCLA, a longitudinal study for 20 years, with hundreds of couples, and they wanted to see what values were common to long-term successful marriages. What values had to be held by the spouses in order to increase the likelihood that the marriage would be successful and happy over the long term. And the one single value they found, far and away beyond all others, that all long-term, happy, successful marriages had in common, was that the spouses valued sacrifice. Those who valued sacrifice were happily married, successfully married, and married for a long time. But this we know, I mean, UCLA can come up with their own findings, but we know this from the Torah. Lahavdil. Rosh Hashanah is coming up. Second day of Rosh Hashanah, we read the reading. What's the Torah reading? Second day. First day is about Sarah becoming pregnant. The second day is Kedis Yitzchak, one of the most dramatic, climactic moments in all of human history. And it's interesting that you would think at the end of the Torah reading, remember, it's the second day of Rosh Hashanah, the Yom Tov Torah reading, it's not the whole Parsha. The Akedah is in Parshas Vayera. It's not the whole Parsha, it's just the Akedah. So it can begin or end wherever it wants to. And yet, it's interesting, what happens is after the Akedah, after Avram unties Yitzchak and he sacrifices the ram instead of him, if the Torah reading is supposed to be about the Akedah, then it should be over. But it's not over. It continues. And there's 8 more verses. The 8 more verses are a genealogy. Whose genealogy? The genealogy of Rivka. Rashi actually has to explain this. He has to deal with why the juxtaposition of this climactic moment of the Akedah and then this kind of dry he begat genealogy. And so Rashi explains, well, really, because what we're doing is we're explaining that after the Akedah, Avram thought to himself, wow, my son almost died, and he never got married yet. I have to look for a wife. And who was the wife? It was Rivka, who is part of this genealogy that's listed there in those last 8 verses. So that's how Rashi explains it, that it's because of the Akedah, Yitzchak almost died, and then it occurred to Avram, I got to start thinking about Shidduchim, who was 42 years old anyways, Shidduchim, and the Shidduch was his cousin, Rivka, and she's born there in those 8 verses. The Rebbe explains a little bit deeper. The Rebbe explains like this. The climax of the Torah reading is not the Akedah. The Torah reading is about self-sacrifice, but the Akedah is not the climax, because the Akedah is not the ultimate self-sacrifice. The Akedah is the hachana, is the build-up, is the preparation to the ultimate sacrifice. When Avram Avinu needed to take his son, his beloved only son, to premarital counseling, what was Yitzchak Avinu's premarital counseling? What was his chassan class? He took him to the Akedah. He tied him up. He held a knife over him. He was ready to shecht him. And God said at the last moment, let him go. And after he got down from the altar, God said, okay, now your son is ready to be married. The climax of the Torah reading is not the Akedah. The climax is that he got married to Rivka. The Akedah is the prerequisite, is the warm-up, is the opening act in order to be ready for the real self-sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice, which is marriage. You think more people would get married or less people would get married if we would openly tell them this? Nobody would get married. But at least the one sucker who actually got married would know what he's getting into instead of finding out on the job. Because people get married and they think, it's so funny, they think it's like gonna like enhance their life. It's gonna enhance your life. It's not gonna enhance your life. Your life's over. They say when a man is single, he is incomplete. And when he gets married, he's finished. But the truth is, all these cynical jokes about marriage, married, buried, there's a truth to it. There's a spiritual truth to it. What's the spiritual truth? Marriage is death. Thank you very much. Mazel tov. Ay, 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 ay. Marriage is death. Ego death. What's wrong with a little ego death? I thought we all want bittul. No, we want self-enhancement. Oh, yeah, yeah. No, but spiritual people want bittul. They want to allow themselves to get out of the way, to make room for a power greater than themselves. They're not afraid. They want bittul. They want self-nullification. So really spiritual people know that they have to get married because it's going to force you to be selfless. And that's the best way to get closer to God. Marriage is the best way to get closer to God because it'll kill your ego. And if it doesn't kill your ego, then it'll kill your marriage. One or the other. Or you'll kill each other. One of the three. They used to have a custom in Eretz Yisrael. It talks about it in the Gemara. Actually, there's a whole story about a Roman wagon that broke down and the axle needed to be replaced. And the Romans went and they cut down a cedar tree. And the Jews revolted. You might know it's the Gemara that we learn on Tisha B'Av. The whole story actually ended up in the destruction of the town of Beitar. But anyways, there's a question, what was the deal with the cedar tree? So it says over there that they used to have a custom, that when a boy was born, they would plant a cedar tree, and then when he got married, on his wedding day, they would cut down the cedar tree and they would make his chuppah from that tree that was planted when he was born. It was very symbolic. That's why the Jews were freaking out when the Romans cut down that cedar tree. Hey, we're saving that for the chuppah. But what's the significance? Why a cedar tree? You know, the Pasuk in Tehillim says, Tzadik kitamer yifrach, ke'erez balavonen yisgeh. That the tzaddik will flourish, that means give fruit, like a date palm, like a tamar, a date palm. Teitelboim. He will grow high, tall, like a Lebanese cedar. King Solomon used Lebanese cedars. Lebanese cedars, they grow really, really tall, really good, strong wood. They grow really tall and they're really good wood. So the Baal Shem Tov explained that these are two types of tzaddikim. Tzaddik hatamid yifrach keres belavon yiske. One tzaddik is like a tamar, and one tzaddik is like an erez. What does that mean? Tzaddik was like a tamar, like a date palm. He doesn't grow quite as tall. A date palm is tall, but it's not that tall. Tzaddik was like an erez, like a cedar. He grows really tall, very tall. Tall and strong. Why doesn't the date palm grow as tall as the cedar? Because the date palm takes energy that would have gone into growing itself taller and puts that into fruits that benefit others. So the Baal Shem Tov says there's two types of tzaddikim. One tzaddik is like a date palm, that he actually diminishes from his own spiritual growth in order to be of service, in order to help others. And a cedar is a tzaddik. He is a tzaddik, but he's like a tzaddik in pelts, tzaddik with a fur coat. What does that mean? If it's cold in the house, in the old houses where they had the stove that heats the whole house. So there's two ways of dealing with a cold house. One way is put on a fur coat. Well, who does that help? Just the guy who's wearing the fur coat. The other way is heat up the oven and everybody can be warm from it. So one type of tzaddik, he puts on a fur coat. He's warm. He's spiritually warm, but it doesn't benefit anyone. Another tzaddik, he lights up the oven and he warms up the whole house. Everyone benefits from it. Okay, so the cedar represents focusing on your own spiritual growth and not being of service to others. Let me ask you a question. What phase of life is it appropriate to focus on your own spiritual growth and not to be held responsible for others? When you're a child, when you're even an adolescent, your job is to work on yourself. Your job is to refine yourself. And it's only like the Rebbe said, Kol mi sha'ime ein li ela Torah afilu Torah ein li. The job of a yeshiva bacher is to learn Torah all day, so he can steig, hecher and hecher, higher levels of self-fulfillment, and it's only that he has to take a break a few hours to go mivtzayim once a week, because if you say, I only have Torah, the Gemara says, and to the exclusion of acts of kindness, then you'll even lose your Torah. So he has to, but his main thing, yeshiva bacher's job, and for that matter, a young woman, what's her job? Self-refinement, self-development. That's your job. And that's why Mommy and Tati pay all the bills, and that's why everything's taken care of for you, because we don't want you to be responsible to anyone else. We want you just to grow. This is your time to grow. This is your cedar time. And so they would plant the cedar when the boy was born to symbolize this. And then they would cut it down on the day he was married to symbolize the end of that era. No more cedar time. Now it's not about you anymore. Now you're married, it'll never be just about you anymore, ever again. Now there's another person you have to worry about. And then you're going to become a parent, and there's these little people dependent upon you. And now it's really not about you ever again. And then hopefully you'll grow even more and you realize you don't just have a family to care about, you're a member of a community. And you are responsible to your neighbors. You are responsible to your community. And if you grow up a little bit more, you realize, you know what? Ultimately, you're responsible to Klal Yisroel. And maybe you grow up enough to realize you're responsible to the whole world. The whole world is waiting for you. And it's not about your life. It's not about your personal refinement. It's not about your growth. You had that time. You had time for that. It's over. That time's over. That's called childhood. Childhood is the time for your development. Adulthood is the time for you to be of service. That's the difference between a child and an adult. What's the difference between a child and an adult? Well, according to the Torah, one difference is that a child is a dependent, like any tax forms. How many dependents do you have? There's soymech b'shochone shel aviv, relying upon their father's table. That means they don't have to go out and work. They don't have to pay bills. They're dependent. And then an adult is someone who is a provider. Financially, emotionally, spiritually, socially. A provider in every sense of the word. So how much more success might we see? How much more success, meaning, do you think more people would stay married, and do you think the people who stay married would be happier if they were told the truth that marriage is not about self-enhancement, marriage is about self-nullification, and that self-nullification isn't a dirty word? A spiritual person loves self-nullification. A spiritual person understands the smaller I make myself, the more godly power there's room for in my life. It's like the Rebbe spoke about nuclear power. Torah says that the Eibishter loves you, the Jewish people, ki atem hama'at mikol ha'amim, because you are ma'at, you are small, you are the smallest of all nations. What does that mean, you are the smallest of all nations? Simple reading, if you just open up that verse and you read it on your own, it sounds like it means, that we have a small population. And I guess that's true, we're a minority. But Rashi, who is the commentary who gives the most straightforward, basic meaning of every verse, it's interesting. Rashi does not say atem ma'at mikol ha'amim means that you're few in numbers. It's not what he says. What does Rashi say on that verse? You ma'atim atzmechem, you decrease or diminish. You diminish yourselves. Ka'avrom avichem, like your father Abraham. Sha'amar, who said, V'anoichi ofer ve'efer, I am but dust and ashes. So Rashi says, what does it mean? The Eibishter loves you because you are small. The Eibishter loves you because you're humble. Like your father Abraham, who said, even with all of his merits and his accomplishments, me, I'm dust and ashes. And the Rebbe said, that's like nuclear power. That you take the smallest bit of matter, the atom, and you unleash incredible amounts of energy. And in fact, not only is it from the tiniest amount of matter, but it's from the splitting of the atom. It's taking the tiniest bit of matter and making it even smaller, and that's what unleashes a chain reaction which is incredibly powerful. Much more power than a chemical reaction, a nuclear reaction. So the power of bittul, the power of humility, of making yourself small, of killing the ego, is not that you become a gornish, you become a nothing. It's that you have the power of everything. I'll tell you, somebody shared with me a program that was written for the Pegisha, the encounter with Chabad, which was a program where college students would come to Crown Heights. And recently in the Chassidische Deher magazine, there was a feature on this Pegisha, this encounter with Chabad. and talked a lot about the people who were involved in forming it and engineering it, the architects of this program, and they had there a facsimile of a program. Someone had written up a program in English and had the times and had the meals. I think it even had like the menu, what they were eating, and the names of all the classes on it. Like they wrote up the schedule for the encounter with Chabad, the weekend in Crown Heights for the college students. And they had given it to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe made one comment on the whole paper. There was a lot of writing on the paper. And the Rebbe made one comment on the whole paper. There was a class, and I'm not sure who taught it, but one of the classes was called Bittul Hayesh, the quest for nothingness. Bittul Hayesh is a Chassidic term, the nullification of conscious existence. And then the subtitle was The Quest for Nothingness. And the one comment that Rebbe made on the entire paper, he circled nothingness and wrote a question mark, like, why? Why? You understand? The quest for nothingness. Bittul Hayesh is nothingness? Do you believe in God? Bittul Hayesh, nullifying the ego, is how you make yourself a conduit, a vessel in this world for everything, for all the powers, infinite power, the Eibishter's power. It's not nothingness, it's the exact opposite of nothingness. It's infinite. And maybe if we saw our marriages as an opportunity for that, we'd well, at the very least, you know, we wouldn't be so disappointed or hurt when it cramps our style. Right, and then you have to tell them, I don't have that much bittul yet. I'm working on it. I'm working. I'm not holding there yet. Yeah. No, I'm just joking. The secret to marriage isn't bittul. It's better communication. You would have preferred that. It's about articulating your needs so that you can get what you want. You would love it if I would come here. You know what the secret to marriage is? It's about really, you know, you got to stand up for what you want, and you got to explain what you want so that your spouse can give it to you. You would love it. Wouldn't you love it? Well, forget it. That's not what I'm going to tell you. Marriage is ego death, sacrifice, but it's the most godly thing you can do. Yeah. You think I remember what I said yesterday? Yeah. Yeah. Everyone hears this question? It's a good question. I'm going to repeat it because I have the microphone. I'll make it easier for people to hear. I might not say exactly the same words, but more or less, the gist. And you tell me if I'm getting it right. Yesterday we had a talk called Let Go and Get a Grip, How to Stop Controlling and Start Living. And basically the idea was stop focusing on other people and focus on yourself and stop trying to control people. And one of the main things we spoke about is not being addicted to approval. You make yourself the martyr because you want the other person to tell you you're okay, and you compromise your dignity and your principles and all that kind of stuff, and it doesn't lead to intimacy because it's ultimately just a manipulative relationship where you try to use the other person to get them to tell you that you're okay. It's an okay summary of what I said yesterday? Okay, so now I'm saying sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. You've hit upon a great question. This is always, I think, like the most difficult, this is the most difficult aspect of the whole, you know, I guess what I call being God conscious in your human relationships. I think this piece of the puzzle is the most difficult piece. And this question, or questions like it, always come up. Let me give you an example of where I think the misunderstanding lies. You hear some people, they say, you know, I'm a people pleaser. That's my nature. I'm a people pleaser. I'm a codependent. And my recovery is to engage in self-care, and therefore it's toxic for me to bend over backwards for others, and that's it. You know, you want to ride to the airport? Sorry, Charlie, call Uber. I can't take you to the airport. That just plays way too much into my codependence. I'm always rescuing everybody, always, you know, Jewish mother syndrome. I'm always worrying about everybody's business. I can't do that anymore. I'm going to take care. I'm going to my yoga class. You call Uber. And I hear this a lot. I hear it a lot. And it's sad because it's a really honest and sincere and earnest attempt to get well, but it's a misunderstanding of the problem. And if you don't understand the problem, obviously the solution is going to be skewed as well. The problem of being a people pleaser, a codependent, a Jewish mother, whatever you want to call it, the problem, okay, so let's say it's an addiction. Let's call it an addiction. You know, I'm addicted to people or addicted to their approval. Approval addict. The problem with being an approval addict is not that you do nice things. That's actually a good thing that you do nice things. I mean, some people are addicted to crack. That doesn't help anybody. If you're addicted to running the bake sale, that's actually a productive addiction. I mean, it's still an addiction. It's unhealthy, and you shouldn't do it addictively. But I'm saying your particular addiction actually has some objective benefit in the world. But let's talk about how do we make it healthy? How do we make it healthy? Okay. The toxic part of it isn't that you're doing kindness. The toxic part of it is that you're getting high on the approval that you get from doing kindness. So the person who says, I'm a people pleaser, I'm an approval addict, so therefore the way I avoid that is I abstain from doing anything nice, because God forbid I'll do something nice and you'll be appreciative and I'll get high off of that. That's just going to the opposite extreme. They're both selfishness. They're just two opposite ways of being selfish. Not doing nice things for people ever again is obviously selfish, right? But the people pleaser is also selfish. The people pleaser is also selfish. Because remember, the people pleaser isn't really doing good things altruistically. Like I told you yesterday, altruism is for fun and for free. The people pleaser isn't really doing good things altruistically. The people pleaser is investing in relationships, is using kindness as a form of emotional barter to take from others and get that approval, that hit, that high, that I'm okay, please tell me I'm okay. So the people pleaser is not a giver. The people pleaser is a taker. It's just you're not a thug. You don't run up to people in the alley and mug them for their approval. You're a con man. You're in the long con. You make them owe you your approval. And then if they don't give it to you, then you can get nasty like the mugger in the alley anyways. You can always turn on them. I give everything. I give everything. You give nothing. That's what I was trying to describe yesterday. I don't know if people caught it, but the moral high ground of the codependent. You're using me. Well, no, actually, you're using me. Emotional sobriety for the codependent, the people pleaser, the approval addict, is not to not do nice things for people ever again. Emotional sobriety for the codependent or the people pleaser or the approval addict is to do nice things and not stick around for recognition. Like, you know how to sin without getting caught. This is doing mitzvahs without getting caught. Do something nice and don't stick around for acknowledgement. Don't fish for a compliment. You don't need it. When will you know that you're sober? When you can do something nice and feel full, feel satisfied just from doing something nice, and not have that empty feeling of, when will I be told by another human being that what I did was good? So when we talk about sacrifice in marriage, it doesn't mean sacrificing yourself to another human being. What would that even gain you? My problem is that I'm an ego. So I'll sacrifice myself to another ego? It's not really a step up. It's a step out. It's not a step up. Sometimes a step out is better than nothing, but it's not a step up. I sacrifice myself to God. So when I maintain peace in the home, when I make sure to be easygoing and good-natured and not to pursue my will, I'm not doing it because, oh, I don't want to make my spouse angry. Oh, I don't want to become unpopular. Maybe, you know, he won't love me anymore, or she won't love me, or... That's not sacrifice to God. That's sacrifice to another human being. That's not going to get you anywhere. Sacrifice to God means that I'm doing a really big mitzvah, the biggest mitzvah. Hashem created the world to have a dwelling place, to have a home in this world. The biggest way I contribute to that is by making my home a home for God in this world. So if I have to make sacrifices, meaning not to do what I like, not to get my way, so that the Shekhinah can be at home in my family and in my house, then so be it. But I'm not doing it for another person. Yeah, because you're dealing with another person, that's what creates the conflict. That's why you have to even make sacrifices in the first place. But you're not doing it for them. You're doing it because of them. In other words, if you'd be single, the need to sacrifice wouldn't even arise. It wouldn't even come up. Now that there are other people in your life that you have to get along with, now the need arises. But you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for God. There's a big difference. And the simplest distinction that you can test with yourself is that when you do something difficult, when you do something that takes a lot of humility, are you satisfied with the fact that the only one who cares is God himself? Do you need your spouse to acknowledge that you are selfless? Because if you do, that's not selfless. And it's not spiritual, and it's not godly. We do not get burnt out from being givers. We were made to be givers. We were designed to be givers. God built us to be givers. Giving isn't toxic. Taking is toxic. And the worst, most insidious form of taking is when you turn giving into a form of taking. When you become the nice guy or the nice girl to whom everyone is indebted, that is not giving, that is taking. And taking uses us up real fast. We get really sick and tired. It's counterintuitive, because you would think that if I take, I'll feel full. And if I give, I'll feel empty. But it's the exact opposite. When I give, I feel full, and when I take, I feel sick. It's like the Galilee and the Yam HaMelech, the Dead Sea, right? It's the same exact water, identical water. The snow melts in the mountains up north, and it forms rivulets, and it empties into the Galilee, the Kinneret. And water always goes downhill. The lowest elevation on the face of the earth is the Dead Sea, so the water ends up there in the Dead Sea. Now you look at the Kinneret, and everything in it is alive. It's thriving with sea life. Everything around it is alive. All the vegetation is lush, is green, and the whole Eretz Yisroel lives off of the drinking water from there. And then you go downstream, the Jordan River is just the Kinneret emptying itself out, going downstream, going downhill with the gravity until it gets to the Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea is so dead, nothing can live in it, not even a shellfish. And nothing lives around it. Nothing can grow, no vegetation, nothing. You can't drink it. It's poison, despite what the guys at the kiosk at the mall tell you. But it's the same exact water. What's the difference? The difference is the Kinneret is always moving. As soon as it gets filled up, it empties out. There's always movement, and it stays alive. The Dead Sea, the water gets there. It's the lowest elevation on earth, and that's the end of the line. It can't go anywhere else, so it just sits there. There's nowhere for the water to go. It could evaporate, that's about it. But it just sits there, and so it soaks up minerals from the seabed and becomes salt and becomes poison. The giver is alive. The one who gives away everything, every drop, is alive. The taker is dead. Yeah? Say again? Taking appropriately and generously is giving. Yeah, the emphasis is on appropriately and generously. That's right. Sometimes receiving can be a gift. If you buy your child a gift and they receive it, they're actually giving more to you than you're giving to them. That's true. So when somebody wants to give to you and will feel good by giving to you, then it's generous to receive the gift. But that's, again, you're not doing it because you are needy. You're doing it because you're trying to be of service. You're trying to be sensitive to the other. And that's why that type of an interaction can be fulfilling for both parties, because they're both being sensitive to each other. The toxic codependency or people-pleasing is when you're not really being sensitive to the other person. You are using the other person because you don't feel enough that you have a purpose, that you're okay, that you're allowed to exist, because you forgot about the fact that God already told you that you are precious and valuable. And now you're looking around to get people to tell you that. And that's never going to end well. What else? Yeah?
Is there a proper way to recognize a spouse's act of humility without, compromising their sacrifice?
So here's expert level. The question was, is there an appropriate way to recognize a spouse's sacrifice without ruining their opportunity to be humble and anonymous? Or feeding it, yeah, and feeding into their approval addiction. Okay, so here's the thing. This is expert level, but here's the thing. When you are the people pleaser and you learn how to give and be selfless, truly selfless, without the need for recognition, then not only are you able to give in a healthy way, but even if it so happens that somebody catches you being good and acknowledges it, you won't get high off of it. You'll be able to take a compliment in a sober way. It won't make you or break you. You know, instead of flying over the moon, oh, you noticed. You can just smile and say, it was a pleasure. It's my pleasure. So it's not your job to say, you know what, I don't want to test my spouse. That would be like, you know, setting a stumbling block before the blind. If I compliment my spouse, I may be feeding into her ego or feeding into his ego. That's not your problem. You have to be a mensch. And that means saying thank you when somebody does something nice for you. It's not your problem. It's like if somebody's an alcoholic. It's your problem not to have alcohol in the house. That's not your problem. By the way, it's not your problem. So somebody is addicted to approval. So I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you stay abstinent. I'm not going to give you any acknowledgement. It's not your problem. You have to be a mensch. You have to conduct yourself with manners, and that means to say please, to say thank you, and you're welcome, and all these things. Be'emes, you only really need one spouse to have bittul, but if you say that to people, then they all count on it being the other one. It's like with chinuch. You know, with chinuch, they say the schools have to educate the kids as if they're getting nothing at home. And the parents have to raise their kids as if they're getting nothing in school. And then maybe everything will be all right. Your only control is your own bittul, right? And even if one person has bittul, it'll be okay. Yeah, it is true. If one person has bittul, it'll be okay. You could trade, yeah, you could even trade off. I don't know, you know, maybe put a schedule up on the refrigerator. Oh, shoot, it's my day to be selfless. Hold on a second. Do me a favor. I'll take the next 2 days if you let me have today. Yeah.
Or would you say that on a subconscious level, this bittul will bring forth, attract?
It could, but sometimes it doesn't. Oh, no. You're saying, okay, so that's a good question. That's a good question. And this is a real fear. Will my bittul open me up for abuse? I mean, that's basically what you're saying. Yeah, okay. So Rabbi Wolf asked, if I'll have bittul, will my spouse have bittul? Kamayim alpanim. And my answer was, maybe yeah, maybe not. That's not a guarantee. But then the reverse question is, okay, fine. It's not going to make my spouse have more bittul just because I have bittul. But will it make my spouse more demanding, more tyrannical if I have bittul? Okay, so let me get back to the same point I'm harping on. Do you know the expression, you cannot con an honest man? You know the expression, you cannot con an honest man? My grandfather, my Zaydi Olav Shalom, was like an insanely scrupulous businessman. Like, really, really scrupulous. He would never do anything that even was the least bit shady. And he used to say this all the time, you cannot con an honest man. People get ripped off trying to go for an easy buck. That's how it works. Some guy standing in an alley, he says, hey man, come here. You want to buy some electronics for cheap? Now, that's shady. You know something's weird with that. Yeah, it's all good. Okay, yeah, here's the stereo. Yeah, okay, yeah, I just got to go get it. Give me $100. I'm going to go. My friend is over there in the truck down there. Yeah, don't worry, I'll be right back. That's a scam? Disneyland tickets not from Disneyland? What's the scam? And if you would have just paid full price, and even on a much more subtle level, and this, I don't know, maybe you'll have a hard time with this. I don't know why I probably shouldn't go here, but what the heck. You know, the sympathy cons. Yeah, I just need $12 for a bus ticket. Yeah, my buddy, he left me at the gas station, drove off. They're playing upon your desire to feel like a do-gooder. So you can't con an honest man. You can't rip off somebody who's not trying to get something. That's how you get something out of the guy. You figure out what he's trying to get. And once you figure out what he wants to get, and usually, money is an easy one because everyone wants to get money. Now you got him. Now you can rip him off. You cannot be emotionally blackmailed unless you are trying to get an emotional reaction from the person who's emotionally blackmailing you. If you're good with your God and you know that you're doing the right thing, and whether you get approval or you don't get approval, whether you get thanks or you don't get thanks, but you can say your bedtime shema at night and know that you're a mensch and you're doing the right thing, even if your loved ones don't recognize it, they cannot emotionally blackmail you. So the truth is, bittul will actually make you safer, whereas seeking ego enhancement is going to put you more at risk. The needier you are, the more at risk you are. The more pre-validated you feel, meaning going into your interaction with another human being, you're already validated from God, and you don't need their validation, so you're really not at risk. What are they going to hold over you? What leverage do they have over you? They can't hold anything over you. Yeah?
So, when I'm hearing, it sounds to me like a healthy recipe for a good relationship with anyone, spouse, being a good friend and being a good person in general, a community member, etc. But where's the part of marriage that's the partnership, that's the growth? This is just sounds to me like you're treading water so that nobody's, getting killed. But where's the okay, so now we're healthy human beings having a relationship.
Yeah.
What about
the next part? What's the next part? What's the next part? What is it?
I don't know. I mean, no, but obviously, I can be roommates with anybody, right? So if I find a way to have a capital with my roommate, which everyone's ever
Right.
probably can relate to that.
Right.
Similar concept to some degree. There's got to be something more than simply.
Well, what are you saying? Emotion, emotional connection? Is that what you're saying over here? Yeah, an emotional connection? Oh, boring. Well, I can give you the opposite of boring. If you don't like boring, by the way, I can give you the formula for a lot of excitement. Yeah, you could be calling Rabbonim at 3 in the morning. It's a lot of fun. I know how to do it. I mean, it's really good. And basically, everybody is trying to control everybody else in the house, and everybody knows what's right for everybody else, and they're not afraid to share their opinion, right? And everybody's right, by the way. Everybody's self-righteous. It's a jihad. It's a holy war, because not only I know what's right, but I have, Torah is backing me up here. I know what's right for you. And it can be a lot of excitement, a lot of drama. Don't confuse drama with real bonding. Every teenage relationship is about drama. There's no bonding. How can they bond? They don't even know who they are, so how can they offer themselves to another human being? Hold on. So first of all, when you say, oh, it sounds real boring, you know what? I'm okay with boring. You know what? Maybe a little bit of tranquility, maybe a little bit of quiet wouldn't be such a terrible thing. Maybe, okay. If it's boring, let it be boring. A little peace, just a little peace. Now, the truth is that in most cases where people are healthy, if there's peace, if there's tranquility, then there is security. There's the safety to be vulnerable. And that's when emotional bonding happens. Emotional bonding is not the same as being emotive. Screaming at each other is emotive. And then making up is emotive. That's not emotional bonding. Emotional bonding takes place when both parties feel safe. Is it boring? Yeah, I guess to get to a place of emotional safety, you actually do have to be willing to go through some boringness, which is sort of akin to the fact that in order to have a really deep level of communication with somebody, you have to be comfortable with sometimes the conversation being silent. Some people can't deal with the silence. They always have to be talking, and the relationship basically stays on that superficial level of chit-chat. But if you're comfortable with silence, not every conversation has to be so interesting. Then, sometimes there can be a really deep conversation. If you're comfortable with things being not dramatic at home, boring, then from time to time, people will have that vulnerability to really open up. Yeah. I did. I said peace. Yeah, that was her word, was boring. And I was, yeah, but here, yeah, right, that's what I said. I said boring is fine, because at least it's calm. So if somebody wants to use the word boring, I'm not even going to tell her, don't call it boring. I'm going to say, fine, call it boring. No problem, call it boring.
Now, when you say that 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, there was never a class on marriage. Everybody was married, there was never a class about it. No one
Yeah.
discussed it. They were married.
Right.
Was it because the bittul was just natural and that's the way people lived, or was it no one discussed their problems because they were always running away from the cousins? I just think that because people are so, now in culture, people are so fed with ego when you're young, you have so much tied up.
Right.
When you grow up, you're consuming yourself. Maybe you know about that. Is that?
Okay, so this is what Rabbi Wolf is asking. Why do we have to have marriage classes? And by the way, the truth is this is not a marriage class, it's a Chassidus class. So I'll change your question to why do we need to have Chassidus classes? And that's a real question because 300 years ago they didn't have Chassidus classes. And the Rebbe would deal with this question pretty much every single Yud Tes Kislev. The Rebbe would ask, if Chassidus is so important, how come they didn't learn it 300 years ago? And the basic answer is, people were intuitively Chassidic. Whatever it is that Chassidus does for you, they had it in their blood. So one answer to the question is, you read us a Doiros. It's a downward spiral. We're farther away from Matan Torah. And so we need to be told things that used to be intuitive, things that used to be no-brainers. They're not no-brainers for us. We need to be told. And that's why Chassidus came along. And that's why talking about marriage and talking about chinuch and talking about emunah. Who used to talk about emunah? You don't have to talk about it. Just that's the air that you breathe, emunah. Now we have classes in emunah. It's like having classes in breathing. But they have that too, especially in LA. But I'll tell you also, the Rebbe said that Chassidus, there's two ways of looking at it. One way is, the famous mashal of the previous Rebbe about the miners and the deep sea divers. The miners are digging for coal, and the deep sea divers are diving for pearls. And that's like the person who's delving into the Torah to bring out the secrets of the Torah. So the Rebbe asks, which one is it? Is it coal or is it pearls? So he says like this. First of all, it's coal. Coal means fuel to warm up the house. We're cold. We need to warm ourselves up. We are not intuitively spiritual, and therefore we need Chassidus. That's our coal. That's our fuel to keep us warm so we don't freeze to death in this exile. And at the same time, Chassidus is also our pearls. When do you put on your pearls? You're going out to a wedding. You're on the way to a chasana. You're on the way to a fancy event. You want to look nice. You beautify yourself. You put on your jewelry. You put on your pearls. We're about to head into the redemption. We want to look the part. So there's two ways of looking at it. We're at the very, very last moments of exile, so things are really dark and cold. And we need Chassidus to keep us warm so we don't freeze to death. And we need to be told things that used to be intuitive and no-brainers. On the other hand, we're about to head into the chasana, and we need to dress the part. We need to get ready. It's Erev Shabbos. We need to taste Shabbos already. And so we need to start experiencing what is it going to be like when Mashiach comes. Mashiach is going to teach us all the secrets of the Torah. So as a precursor to that, we need to learn the secrets of the Torah. Secrets of the Torah means you take things, simple things like marriage, which everybody does, everybody always did, but all of a sudden we reveal this deeper dimension of what it means. So it's both. It's coals and it's pearls. And it can be both at the same time. We need spiritual lessons like this, Pasha, to survive. And at the same exact time, these types of spiritual insights are what get us ready for a radical change in the world where we're going to have deep insights like this about everything. What else? Anything else? Yeah? It's not good for you, yeah. Let me ask you a question. Are you a Baal Taiva if you put chocolate in your mouth and it tastes good? I think, Dafka, you can answer it. That makes you a Baal Taiva? That's not what I said. No, I said, if you put chocolate in your mouth, I don't care how much, and it tastes good, are you a Baal Taiva? What's a Baal Taiva? What's a Taiva? What's a Taiva? Taiva isn't feeling good. Taiva is a desire. You know the difference between Taiva and Tainug? Taiva is you want pleasure. Tainug is the pleasure. So if you put chocolate in your mouth and it tastes good, are you a Baal Taiva? What Taiva? There's no Taiva. It's just a sensation. You can't control it. You can't control what your body feels. It's just a sensation. You put chocolate in your mouth, there's a certain response. It's the way your brain is wired. There's no moral choice. There's no choice. You put chocolate in your mouth, it tastes good. If you hear a compliment, it feels good. You're not a Baal Taiva because chocolate tastes good to you. You're a Baal Taiva for trying to get the taste of chocolate. And you are an absolutely dysfunctional Baal Taiva when you will reorganize your life around the pursuit of getting that taste of chocolate. So when you hear praise and it feels good, congratulations, you're human. But when you start to make decisions based on what increases the likelihood of hearing that praise, now you've compromised yourself. Please. The payoff is more forthcoming. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and that's, there can be a little religious codependence as well, which is using God for reward, or because, you know, you want him to give you a 10-speed bike. Yeah, there is such a thing. And we try to get rid of that as well. And ultimately, like the Alter Rebbe told Hashem, Ich will nicht dein Gan Eden, ich will nicht dein Elam Haba, ich will mir nicht as dich allein. I don't want your paradise, I don't want your heaven, I don't want it. I want you, right? No payoff. No payoff. I don't want a payoff. I want you. Yeah, even in our relationship with Hashem, it should really be selfless. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 It's not nice, you're right. Is it your problem? It's a choice. Why did you do it? You said you made a meal for Yom Tov. You made meals for Yom Tov and you didn't get thanked. Why did you make meals for Yom Tov? To get thanked. Why'd you do it? For your family? What does that mean for your family? So that your family should thank you? No, what does that mean then? To create a wonderful evening? Okay, so get tickets to a Broadway play. Not a wonderful evening, because it's the Eibishter's Yom Tov, and it's a Jewish home. Okay, fine, so you did something for Hashem, and people didn't thank you. But you didn't do it for them, so you're okay. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, this is similar to the question that Rabbi Wolf asked before, which is if you're going to be mavatal yourself and you're going to be all humble, how do you know the other person's not going to take advantage? Or if they are taking advantage, at what point do you say, Ad Khan, enough? So I'll put it like this. And I thought I said it before, but I'll say it again because I know it's a tough lesson. If you truly have bittul, you're not trying to get the other person's approval. We take abuse because we're hooked in on getting their approval. Why does the gambling addict not walk away from the blackjack table after he lost all of the money that he brought with him? Why does he go and pawn his watch? Or why does he go cash out the kid's college account? Because he's sure if he'll just keep playing, eventually he'll win. Why do we stay in a situation that's a losing proposition? Because we're sure if we'll just stick around long enough, eventually the person's going to be a mensch. Like I said before, a person who has bittul can't be taken advantage of. You can't take advantage of a person who has bittul. They're not hooked in. Of course it's real bittul. Real bittul means the only thing I care about in life is God. That's real bittul. Okay. So here's the question. What do you want? You want the person should do something different? They're not going to. You can do something different. So you have bittul, and the other person is still being not nice. Okay, so what do you want? What do you want? Oh, that's the question. So what should you do? So I'll put it like this, very simple. If your only complaint is that you are being a mensch and you're not getting thanked for it, I'm sorry, that's not a valid complaint. We don't need to be thanked. If your complaint is, I'm being a mensch, I'm not expecting anything, I'm not expecting even recognition, but this other person is actively hurting me, they're actually doing things to me that are hurting me, then you have to make a decision. Is it safe for me to be in this situation, or do I have to take myself out of it or distance myself from it? But let me explain something to you. Who's more likely to make a mature and sober decision? The people pleaser who's hooked into the other person, or the person with bittul who's only trying to please God? You're in a situation where someone else is hurting you, and you have to make a decision. Am I going to take a step back from this toxic relationship? Who's more likely to make a better decision in that situation? A person who's addicted to the person who's hurting them, or the person who's not people-pleasing, the person who is just trying to serve God? Obviously, in that situation, bittul is your greatest friend. Bittul is your friend, because bittul is going to help you to make a sober decision. You know what? I'm willing to continue to be humble and to continue in this situation, but I've come to a point where actually I'm getting hurt, not emotionally hurt. I'm, let's say, easiest example, because just so black and white, is, let's say someone's being physically abused. Okay, so it's not that I'm taking myself out of an abusive situation because I don't like it. It's that it's immoral to allow somebody to be physically abused, including yourself. You're not allowed to let anybody be abused, including yourself. So you take yourself out of the relationship, or you back out, or you find a way to make yourself safer, whatever it is. The point is, who's more likely to make that bold decision and to do the right thing and to get yourself to safety? The person with more bittul. The one who hangs around for more abuse, that's the one who's hooked into the relationship. That's like the guy standing at the blackjack table and he won't leave because he knows if I keep playing, eventually I'll beat the house until he loses everything. Well, the person with bittul can come to a point and say, you know what, I have to make a mature decision. It's a difficult decision, but it would be wrong, it would be immoral to continue to allow myself to be subject to this. Bittul's not going to get you hurt more. It's going to help you make better decisions. Yeah? Right.
So how do you advise a woman to just cut off that emotional response?
It's almost as if the brain rules over the heart. I'd say the same advice to men who are being too emotional. Well, let's start with intellectual clarity, because the way that God made us, we can have intellectual clarity before we have emotional clarity. So at least let's know the right thing, even if we can't yet feel it. And then what do we try to do? V'yadaita hayem, you should know today, that's intellectual clarity. V'hishevesa levavecha, place it upon your heart, that's emotional clarity. There's two stages. One is to know the right thing, the next is to feel it. And what do we do in order to get ourselves to feel what we know? What? Well, that's hergel nice tavasheni. Yeah, that's not really making it emotional. That makes it habitual, and it helps, but that's not how you do it. No. Yeah, but answer the question: how do you make something that you know something that you feel? What? Think about it. He's beinenus. So when Chassidus talks about being misbeinen in Gadlus Hashem, what does that mean? It means to think about Hashem and your relationship with Hashem until that becomes more real than your need for approval from human beings. Baruch Hashem, we have the tools. We were given Chassidus. And they all work. The tools work. I won't ask you how many hours a week do you meditate? Because generally the answer to the question is we don't meditate at all. Well, if you're not meditating at all, how in the world do you expect the things that you know to become things that you feel? We have to think about these things. And not to think about people. Don't meditate on people. I don't need to get your approval. I don't need to get your approval. Think about Hashem. Eibishter, you have so much faith in me. Eibishter, you love me so much. Eibishter, you gave me so much responsibility. Eibishter, I want to give you so much nachas. Eibishter, I love you so much. And you'll see, after a while, a funny thing happens. You can actually be nice to people just because it's a mitzvah. Amazing. Okay, well, we're going to say Rabbi Wolf. Could this be the last question? It has to be good, no pressure.
I would think that probably the harder challenge in such a people is like when sacrifice is involved with someone's spiritual or religiosity. In other words, he's feeling like she's feeling that he has to give up on his beloved and walk in.
Yeah. Everyone hears the question? Where the sacrifice involves, it's like, okay, I'm sacrificing for Hashem. And what am I sacrificing? Something that affects my Yiddishkeit. So like a spouse who's not so frum. So then, which one is really for Hashem? That's a good question. I told you yesterday. I'll say it again. Bechira Chavshis means that we have moral free choice. Moral free choice doesn't mean to choose other people's behaviors. It means to choose our own behaviors. You are accountable for yourself. You're accountable for yourself. And if you're in a situation, which happens, you're not the only one, where there are complications that have to be dealt with because there's a discrepancy in Yiddishkeit, then you talk to a Rav and you find out what your obligations are. It's very simple. Don't make it an emotional thing. Keep it very business-like. What am I mechuyev in? What does the Eibishter expect from me? The Eibishter gave me a Torah. It's not touchy-feely. It's not like you have to guess what does the Eibishter like. The Eibishter set up a system that's really easy to objectify. What are the behaviors that are expected of me? You ask a Rav, and that's it. That's what I have to do. And anything else, what the other person is doing, really not my business. Anyway, secret to the marriage workshop is the same secret as to the chinuch workshop, which is the same secret to any workshop, which is Eined Mulvade, and the only relationship you have to worry about is your relationship with Hashem.